This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, this week, we're back with our last episode of 2018. It's Christmas Day, Jay. The presents have all been opened. The eggnog has been drunk. We're all exhausted from waking up at 5:40 in the morning when our kids scream to open presents, and we made a cup of coffee and watched them tear open 20 presents in 30 seconds. And now they're playing with the boxes, not the presents.
This will be the first Christmas in my daughter's life that she will have Christmas morning at her own home because we're not traveling on Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's
so
us too.
I'm looking forward to that.
Us too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Good.
Yeah, it's the first year. So congratulations on being at home.
Yeah, I know.
We made it through another year, Jay. Another amazing year. We had so much fun with so many different episodes. We're going to recap the year and talk about a whole bunch of new and interesting things for 2019.
Yes, it's hard to believe we've done 8 of these. I'm still trying to get my head around it.
I know. When I see the number 415, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Yep.
Of course, we would not be to that number if it was not for the amazing community of folks that are supporting this podcast. A big shout out goes to our folks at Patreon who have been supporting us for the last couple of years, helping us to achieve some goals that we wanted to do this year. We kicked off our very first Dig Me Out 80s episode. That was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And we're looking at doing some really interesting and fun stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We put together some polls, Jay, because we wanted to recap this year and talk about some of the stuff that happened. Mm-hmm. We wanted to get an idea of what people liked and just what their thoughts were on this past season. So one of the things we asked was what people, as far as the roundtables went, what were their favorite episodes? And the voting ended just like a minute before we started recording this episode.
Hot off the press.
Hot, literally. I couldn't even handle this paper. It was so hot. Virtual paper. So what we learned is that there's a lot of it's spread out.
Yep.
19% was the winner, which is not, and it was split amongst 2 different episodes.
Right.
Both of them were what we call genre dissection episodes, where we go into a genre of music and talk about the history of that in the 90s. The Power Pop in the 90s episode and then the Desert Rock episode, which were done a little bit differently, but were basically the same concept. Those were the winner at 19%. Now at 10%, we had stuff like albums of 1998, Diggin' Your Scene New York, U2 in the 90s, the Spoon Origins episode, side projects of the 90s. And then at 5%, we had Aerosmith, Diggin' Your Scene Dayton, drummers of the 90s. The only one that didn't garner a vote, Jay, was the Sophomore Slump Revisited, the Chinese album by Space Hog.
No votes at all?
No votes at all.
Wow. Well, that's pretty obscure.
It's true. It's true.
And the roundtables tend to be more general audience oriented, I think.
You had some questions that you threw out to people, Jay.
Yeah.
One of those questions was with regards to the albums that we have released. Or not released. That we have reviewed. What years people thought most of our albums have come from over the last 8 years. And then you gave 4 options, right?
Yep.
93, 97, 98, and 96.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the voting was tied between 93 and 96.
Okay. What's your vote? What would you have guessed?
My guess. So when we started this podcast, Jay, we tended to go with more obscure stuff that tended to be like weird second albums, which I think is going to fall in the latter half of the decade. So I'm taking 1993 out of there.
Uh-huh.
So my guess is going to be 1996.
Oh, so close. So we have indexed on the middle and second half of the decade quite a bit. So our top year for album reviews is 1997. We've got 49 reviews. Coming in second is 1996 with 45.
That was close.
And then 1994 is third with 43. So pretty close there. I think what's more surprising, or maybe not, what year do you think we have the least reviews from?
I'm going to say 1999.
Oh, nope. We're actually doing pretty good on 99. I think this year we had quite a few. Yeah, we'll get some more obviously next year.
All right, tell me what it is.
1990. We've only reviewed 7 albums from 1990.
Really?
Yes. So we got some work to do there because 49 to 7 is basically the gap between 1997 and 1990. Coming in second and third, 1992 with 17 and 1991 with 20. So the whole first 3 years of the decade we have under-reviewed.
I'll tell you why.
Make up for that.
Because when we started doing the roundtables, they, I think, started when we started doing the the album review roundup. I think that was 2015, so it was 1995. And I think that in terms of albums that have been selected, for whatever reason, have tended to fall, like people will say, hey, since this is 20 years, let's do this episode.
Right.
So it's tended to push albums that have been from 95 to 99. So that makes sense. Yeah,
but I'm looking forward to getting into that first third of the decade because especially 1990, that's just a weird year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the albums we reviewed from then are always odd, and it's just an awkward like adolescent phase. It seems.
Yes.
So it'll be fun. I guess not in the upcoming year, but the year after. Hopefully, we'll get in pretty deep into 1990. But yeah, I was surprised that it was just that far out. Like only 7. I thought maybe 20 or something. But that's unfortunate. And then this year we've definitely made up for the 1998. So we've done 15 reviews this year from 98.
That makes sense.
6 from 99 and 5 from 95.
Okay.
So filling in some gaps there.
Yeah, I think people like to pick ones that have an anniversary when they're doing their anniversary 12-month pick. It makes sense.
Makes sense.
So let me ask you.
Yep.
We discussed this. We were gonna pick our, as far as reviews go, we were gonna pick some of our favorites from this past year. So tell me, I guess let's put it this way: pick a few runners up, and then tell me your favorite review or discovery through a review that we had from this year.
For a discovery, I've got quite a few here. At the top of my list, that's a pure discovery, would be Finney Scad, the album Wider Screen, recommended by Darren Leach. So, I mean, this was I had no idea this band existed.
Right.
I mean, like the name sounded made up. I mean, just no point of reference whatsoever, and really enjoyed it. It's one that when it comes on, just in the rotation, I always am surprised at how good it is and how much I enjoy it. So I think that was my number one discovery. How about you?
Well, it's weird. We had a lot of great records, a lot of them that I really enjoyed. I think I probably gave more worthy albums this year than any year that we have done this show.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoyed revisiting ones that I sort of knew, like the Scott Weiland record, like the James record. I felt like, I kind of know this record, but I really kind of didn't. The Manson record, those sorts of things. And then I liked getting into records like the Manic Street Preachers when we did that back in January, revisiting This Is My Truth, because it's such a fascinating record in their discography. The one that I will say that is still to this day like one of the most confounding albums, and when people say, I've had people talk to me about the podcast that have never listened to it, and they'll say, well, what's a record that like really like was crazy, or you weren't quite sure what to make of it? I'm like, Sheena, Ringo.
Yeah.
That is one where I will put it on, like I'll be driving somewhere, and they'll be like, going out to dinner, Someone's like, "Oh yeah, don't you do a podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then it'll come up, and I'll be like, "Let me play you this." That Shozo Strip album is so crazy and all over the place, and so many musical styles and so much stuff going on, and it's just such an assault. And I'm still processing it. I don't still 100% know what's going on with that record. There were a lot that I've quite a few that I was familiar with going into this year, whether it was Built to Spill or the Posies or what have you. So there wasn't as many discoveries as much as relearning some stuff or revisiting some stuff that I kind of knew. The Finney Scad one is a great pick because we'd never heard of that, and there's a lot of interesting stuff. Same with that the Falling Joys record. That had some interesting stuff on it that, again, we'd never heard that band before.
Yep.
And even the Prick record.
Yeah, that's in my discovery list too.
Yeah, good job, Retention Pond Honeys. That was a good pick.
Yeah, that was one that I vaguely remember the band name, but really was surprised by how much I liked the record and just how unique it was. I think that's what, as I go through my discovery list, what I liked most about this year. There's just a lot of really unique sounding bands here. Finney Scad, Lusk, which was a band I was aware of, but I had never listened to the record. James Stelter brought that to us. Prick, Retention Pond Honeys.
Yep.
I thought The Gathering was surprisingly good. Scott Witt brought that to us, and that's a record that if you were to describe it to me, like what it was going to be like, I probably would have not listened to it. But setting that aside and just giving it a chance, I think that's a really interesting band. I'm with you with the Sheena Ringo record. That was my number 5. Crawford Blair brought that to us, and that was just eye-opening on a whole world of music that neither of us knew existed. And then there were some rediscoveries too. You mentioned a couple, but this is probably the year I spent the most time with Frosting on the Beater, and I think that album clicked for me. Adam DeSoto recommended that. I think maybe my favorite episode, though, so setting aside the record, just the episode was the Local H Pack Up the Cats, because Steve Mazinski and Dewey Cole were on, and they're just so knowledgeable about that band and the record that it's fun when we can kind of sit back and learn and have some folks on that know the records instead of us stumbling around trying to figure things out.
Right.
So I thought that was just a fun episode and super informative, and hopefully people liked it.
I think in terms of pure fun,
that,
and then a surprising fun was the Guar episode with Andrew O.C. Just because we were so unaware what we were getting into going into that record.
True.
And I think if you had told us that we were going to walk away thinking, not bad.
Yeah.
We probably would have been in denial.
Yeah.
And we actually got something out of that. So I hope to continue that Halloween episode tradition going forward as well, like we did the previous year and this year and next year. Now, in addition to our reviews, we only got to a couple interviews this year, Jay. We got to chat with Craig Wedren of Shudder to Think. He had a new solo record out. He's been involved in a lot of different projects. We got to talk with Eric and Bill from Ultimate Fakebook. And then we got to have on Johnny Polanski, who was actually, that was something that was supposed to happen like a year ago, and then just the timing of his album release got delayed, and we ended up having to bump that. And behind the scenes stuff happens, and you don't get to do things when you're thinking. This was the first year where we didn't have an interview almost every month. I don't think we've ever done an interview every month, but we've always done them like every other month, or 7 or 8 a year. So this was a much slower year in terms of that. But yeah, but all those were fun interviews.
I enjoyed the both of the Craig Wedren and the Johnny Polanski, just because it gave me a chance and an excuse to go back and listen to a lot of their material that I hadn't heard. So a lot of the Craig Wedren solo stuff I like a lot. I enjoyed that, and that stayed in my rotation for months after that interview. I thought the new record was really interesting. I thought the VR thing that he did was pretty cool. Johnny Polanski's been involved in so much stuff. I feel like he's somebody you could talk to, 2, 3, 4 times and not even start to scratch the surface of the stories and all the work that he's done. Craig Wedren the same way. So those were just fun. I know we didn't do a ton, but those two, at least I think we were able to go deep and talk to some people that had really good interesting histories and very strong catalogs. So
yeah,
we went for quality this year, not quantity.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the Ultimate Fakebook episode. It was fun to have Eric and Bill on and get to talk with a band that was coming up at a much different level, but was playing sort of the same area and clubs that we were playing when we were a band. So that was a really interesting perspective, to talk with a band that was on a major at the same time, but also, dealing with very similar issues and stuff that we could identify with, being a band from the Midwest. And so that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed getting to talk with those guys.
What were your favorite roundtables?
So roundtables were a blast this year. I kind of agree with the voters in that it was really, really hard to pick one particular roundtable. Every single one of them were fun. We had great guests on for every single episode. I really enjoyed the Digging Your Scene episodes because they were so drastically different. To go from New York City to Dayton. New York, we had a great group of folks with the New York City episode, and then to have the Dayton episode, with Garen, the author, Nate from Guided by Voices and various bands that he's been in, and then Eric, who's doing the Brainiac doc. That was just a lot of fun, and Dayton has such a rich history, and it's only 45 minutes up the road from me, and I'm still learning about the musics there, and we've weirdly covered a lot of Dayton with regards to Guided by Voices and Mink and tangentially some of the other bands from the area that have played with those bands. So it was a lot of fun. So I think that one was one of my favorites. I also really enjoyed the Aerosmith episode, only because it was such a divisive episode that it was really fun to talk about that band in a way that was as much exhausting as it was entertaining. Which I also want to point out, we can get to talk about it on the episode, but if you have not had the chance to read Steven Tyler's biography, I think it's called Does the Noise in My Head Bother You? I think that's what the title is. It is written like he talks. Oh, so God. It is like stream of conscious, like wham bam wazadaza, like You know, he has some David Lee Roth in him.
Well, the David Lee Roth book is written that way too, so.
Right. So I highly recommend picking that up because that actually helps fill in some of the weird, crazy stuff that happens to that band in the 90s and helps make sense of it.
Gotcha.
So what about you? What are your favorites for this year?
The Desert Rock discussion was a lot of fun. I love that we were able to get Jason Georgiadis on and really dig into his movie because that just made it more complete for me to be able to watch that movie. And then there was another movie. There's another movie about the scene too. Trying to remember what it's called, but I watched both together and then was able to, like, I just got into the research for that quite a bit, trying to stitch everything together and try to get the timeline and all the different people straight in my head.
Right.
So I just had a lot of fun, like, preparing for that. And then to be able to do the discussion around a movie, I don't know, it was just different and made it a little bit more fun for me at least. And I learned a ton. New York City in the 90s was a lot of fun too, to dig into that. It was sort of like the LA scene where, you know, there's a lot going on there. I think that's one where we just started to scratch the surface. Same thing with the drummers in the 90s. I feel like that was one where kind of the guitars of the 90s episode, like as soon as we wrapped, I just felt like we have a lot more work to do.
Right.
In terms of, like, I think both of those episodes at the end, or like the last minute, are just us rattling off names of drummers and guitar players because we just realized we had forgotten so many amazing people. So those are three that really stood out. And the looking at the download data, the roundtables were quite popular in the overall scheme of things. So
yeah,
we're not alone with the fun that we had this year with roundtables. Of the top 10 downloads this year, 7 are roundtable episodes, with the albums of 1998 as our top download for the year. The Drummers of the 90s was number 2. New York City was 3. U2 came in 4th. I kind of expected U2 to be kind of repeat what we did with Van Halen. That was a very popular episode, and I just thought with the big man name that would always make it more downloaded, but it didn't do as well as Van Halen did. Power Pop came in after that. Side Projects. The highest album review from a download perspective this year was Manic Street Preachers' This Is My Truth, followed by Proximity Effect by Not a Surf. And here's a surprise, the last 2. Ultimate Fakebook made the top 10.
Interesting.
So very cool. I know they have a very passionate fan base, so
yep, and they're
no doubt that was
getting
them.
active again, I guess.
Yep. And then last around at the top 10, Digging Your Scene, Dayton. So
awesome.
Good mix of, like, you know, small scene stuff and lesser known bands with some mega acts as well.
So Jay, let's talk a little bit about next year and the roundtables, because clearly people enjoy the roundtables, and to this point, I mean, I don't want to, like, take full, like, responsibility or whatever, but I've kind of been, like, the one directing what we're gonna do on the roundtables.
Yeah.
I the first one of the year is pretty obvious. We just do 20 years ago, and we do the album review, and then when we do, like, genre dissections and Dig in Your Scene and Sophomore Slump Revisited and In the 90s, I just sort of pick what I kind of think would be the next logical one to do, and throw in some random ideas like, hey, let's do Drummers of the 90s, or let's do Side Projects of the 90s, or in previous years we've done stuff like Guitar Gods, or, you know, 90s music and TV shows or compilations, whatever we could think of to create some, you know, interesting discussions. Going forward, I don't want to do that anymore.
This is what we've done with the reviews too. Like when we started the show, I think the first 2 or 3 years were a lot of you and I just flipping through our CD collection, like personally what we liked, and I think we both had lists of albums that we wanted to get to, and then it became pretty clear that our listeners actually had and much better taste sometimes, and also it made it fun for us to go find records that we never knew existed, and be able to experience them for the first time. So yeah, the reviews have obviously evolved to the point where now, I mean, 99% of the reviews we do are all requests and recommended by our listeners.
Yep, the majority are coming in from the listeners, either by their 12-month anniversary pick or they're submitting them to the website, digmeoutpodcast.com, and we're putting them into a poll, and they're getting selected via polls for us to review. So honestly, last year we didn't select a single album to review, and that's how it's going to be going forward as well. We don't have any spots to pick them ourselves. That's okay. We had a ton of fun.
At this point, I've kind of like, I'm not that I don't have a bunch of obscure records that I could pull if I had to, but I've hit the good ones, I think.
Right.
My goodie bin is empty.
But here's what we want to do going forward. We want to involve our Patreon community in helping pick out our round table topics. And that means helping pick out what genres we're going to dissect, what scenes we're going to check out, what huge bands from the 80s and 90s are going to be part of our In the 90s Roundtable series. We're going to figure out what origins we're going to do. And then the random episodes. You know, I have a bunch of ideas for future seasons in terms of what we could do, and I'd also like to throw it out to our Patreon community. What do you think? What are episodes you'd like to do roundtables on? Explain to the people in some broad strokes, as they say, what we want to do with roundtables starting in 2019.
Well, we're going to be opening up a whole new set of tiers on Patreon, wide range of offers and different benefits and rewards. And one of the tiers we're going to be opening up is to be able to join a committee to vote on what our roundtables are. And we're going to keep that pretty tight. There's only going to be so many folks allowed in. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a huge group of people. So a small group of council will decide what these roundtables are going to be as we go forward, and we'll stay with mostly the formats we have, unless we, have some discussion around maybe creating some new ones like you mentioned. But yeah, we're going to hand it over. I think both of you and I have kind of at this point we're getting to scratching the bottom of the barrel in terms of where we want to go. I think it'll be interesting to see where what other genres people bring up, what other scenes people bring up, what legacy acts we should revisit. I think there's been some pretty good recommendations out there over the course of the year and suggestions, and we've wrapped here and there on what we should do. So yeah, we're going to open it up for the people. We're also going to be adding in some cool things like exclusive stickers. So I'm working on a design, probably a couple designs for different tiers, and there'll be kind of a special logo, special sticker that you can throw on your laptop or on your car or whatever. And then we're also going to do some exclusive T-shirts. So coming up with a design for exclusive for the patron tiers that only, the select few who join those will be able to get. So yeah, some cool stuff we got planned, and we're hoping to do more of this, kind of create a little community around the people that are making the show possible, and also making it as good as it is in terms of bringing their knowledge and experience and memories and tastes and all that to the show.
And it goes without saying that it's the Patreon community that's driving all of this, and we once again are very thankful for everyone who's contributed, whether you're at the $1 level or the $7.50 level, whatever it is we go through, put up in the future. Everybody's voice is important in terms of adding comments to our episodes and voting in our polls, and it really helps steer us in the direction that tells us where we want to be going in terms of content for the website, and in terms of reviews, roundtables, interviews, all that kinds of stuff. We'll probably be, whatever we do in terms of the roundtable episodes, we'll have to do a nice amount of lead time, so that once we determine what roundtable we're doing, I can book the guests. Because essentially what we'll be doing is handing it over and saying, all right, we're going to be doing or digging your scene in March. What city are we going to do? And maybe we'll throw up 10 cities and say, vote away, or maybe that'll be left in the comments, and we'll tally up what's in the comments. We haven't decided on that yet. We're still figuring that out. But it's going to be driven by, consensus. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what people want to hear and want to check out. Especially because, we've already done LA, we've done Chicago, we've done New York. So what cities do people want to visit? What bands? I know there's people have brought up bands to me, have said, hey, why have you done this band? Or you should do this band for in the 90s next. This would be awesome. I want to hear what your group would say about this. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the community has to say about that.
I think for like the Origins concept, this is going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
I know we've done Spoon. I think the patrons will be a good, and our listeners in general will be a good source of inspiration there to try to find some bands that are good candidates for that, so we can continue to do that theme.
And we can also discuss, how many in the previous years we've done 2 Digging Your Scenes, 2 Genre Dissections, 2 in the 90s, and then 1 or 2 sophomore slumps. We can determine, do we want to continue to do 1 or 2? Do we want to add a second Origins per year? I mean, there's plenty of options in terms of bands to choose from. We just have to decide. There's also plenty of bands to choose in terms of sophomore slumps if we want to continue doing that. We might even put up polls, decide if we want to continue certain topics for the series that we've done in the previous years. So again, we'll put that out there starting in 2019. As of this episode, you are all now aware that there is a giveaway via our Patreon page. We're giving away, as a nod to our Digging Your Scene Dayton episode, a fresh pressing, sealed, beautiful copy of The Breeders' Last Splash, along with a copy of Garen's book, Rebels and Underdogs, the story of Ohio rock and roll. Just like last year, we gave away a book and a final record. We're doing the same thing this year. Last year, we gave it away. Tara McCook won. She went out and bought a record player so she could play her record. So nice. We're hoping to drive the economy in the same way. And that we will give this away, and it'll drive someone. Maybe it'll go to someone with a massive collection already, and maybe it'll go to someone who doesn't own a record player, and this will be their first record, and they'll start collecting records after that. Who knows? Nice. But we're happy to spread a little Ohio love to our patrons out there. So as of December 31st, when the clock strikes midnight, if you are not a patron, you cannot win. But if you are a patron before that, you can win that. We'll announce the winner on New Year's Day, probably later in the afternoon, after we have slept in, till like 8 or 9 in the morning, whenever our kids wake us up. We'll do our little thing with our magic wheel and spin it, and we'll pick a winner from our patrons. Doesn't matter what level you're at, what tier you're at. Everybody's eligible who is a patron, and we'll ship those out at the beginning of 2019. So, and that's a thank you to everyone who has supported us in the past year and the past couple of years of Patreon.
Yes, I like to think that we're doing our part to just build a little bit of a different history around rock music.
Yep.
We're talking about a lot of bands, albums, topics that largely nobody else is ever going to talk about. So,
right.
And so we're really looking to bring more people in, really, get some more ideas going, share the ownership of all of this. Make sure it stays online. That's a big thing. The more we do, the more expensive it gets to keep and harder it is to organize. But I just like to think that, even if we can play a small role in maybe having an alternative to what Rolling Stone's going to leave behind in terms of the history of this music. It's nice to think that we can do something to at least enlighten a couple people here and there that there's more to things. There's more to the 90s than Nirvana and Pearl Jam.
And Green Day and Radiohead.
Right.
Which are fine bands. I enjoy them.
Right.
But there's more to the story than that. And that's what we're telling here.
A lot more.
So, you know where to go. Patreon.com/digmeout. Digmeoutpodcast.com. iTunes, if you want to leave a review. We always enjoy the feedback. Gives a little, happy little feeling in our tummies when we see that 5-star review. That's always nice.
That's just gas.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It's just all those Christmas cookies you ate today.
I did eat like probably between 12 and 15 Christmas cookies.
Oh my god.
Today. So
hurts just listening
and I've had 2 glasses of red wine. So
woo!
I am ready for bed. I'm not gonna lie. It's only 9:47 and I'm like, good night, folks.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Because our job is done here. We have put a bow J, a J bow, a bow J, Bo Jackson. I don't know why that came on.
A Bojangle.
A Bojangle. On 2018, it's done. It's over with. Another stellar season is in the books. Thanks everyone who has listened. Thanks everyone who has downloaded, streamed. Oh, we're at Spotify now, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
Listen to us there.
Just search Dig Me Out Podcast. Boom, there we are.
And of course,
you never have to leave Spotify again for the rest of your life.
You can find our playlists there for most of our roundtable episodes and interviews that we put up. If you want some, music that's been selected just for you, that's where you go. I'm ready to crack open some more presents, Jay, and see what else is under the tree. I think St. Nick brought me some other some cool socks and whatnot. So
I'm excited to get this tuxedo off and back into my sweats.
Yeah, there you go. Bobby, strike up the house band. Bobby's our intern.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
He's not only the intern, he leads the band. That does a perfect note for note cover of "Dig Me Out" by Sleater Kinney that begins and ends every episode that concludes our year. So that's actually not a recording. That's Bobby and the intern band that's covering that.
Bobby and the intern band.
That's what they're called, Bobby and the intern band.
This would be the best cable access show ever.
It would.
You in your basement with Bobby and the intern band.
Damon Zek's got nothing on us. That's only for Columbus folks. They're the only people are going to get that. All right, for Jay, I'm Tim. We're out of 2018, and we'll be back next year with a new episode of Dig Me Out.
Thanks for listening. To support the podcast, visit www.patreon.com/digmeout and become a monthly subscriber at www.digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, as well as our merchandise store at Zazzle.com.